Be popping on any minute now. Should be
Okay.
on now. Okay, I think we're live now.
All
There,
right.
we just got on. Hello, everybody. Hello, Facebook. Welcome to Thrive Talk Live. Tonight I have Derek Butler with me from DBM Powers. Um, I'm really excited to have him because we have stuff in common, which is that we're both trauma informed. And when you hear him talk, you'll understand what that actually means. And Derek Butler is basically an emotionally responsive coach. He's going to explain more of what that is, but he's an emotionally responsive coach. He's extremely trauma informed. We both have the same coach as far as like Lisa Nichols goes, and that's how we met each other. And I heard him speak one day, and I was like, wow, because I was so impressed by him being trauma informed. So all his services are trauma informed services, and he sees everyone through the trauma lens, which means before he makes a decision or before he makes a judgment on what's wrong with you, he really asks questions to see what happened to you, and it's really not what's wrong with you. So this is who he is, and we're just really excited to bring this to you. And a lot of times when we are in the helping profession, we really get into the helping profession because we are not trying, we are repurposing our own pain, and we're trying to help others, and we try to flip things around with for others the same way that we did it for ourselves. So basically, I know that's what he's done, and if you saw him at the Greatness Summit, you would know that's what he's done. He had a great talk over there also. But before we get started, I want to introduce myself in case, and if you guys don't mind, by the way, if you guys could share this to Circle of Champions, because I didn't do it, even though I said I didn't do it. But my name is SARAI NAMMUR. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. I'm the founder of Trinity Community Mental Health Center in Miami Lakes, Florida, which is a trauma-informed agency. We've been here for about 14 years. I'm also the founder of Circle of Champions Worldwide, which is a nonprofit dedicated to providing education to the community on mental health and how to use positive psychology to help you overcome your traumas, and so that you can live a more fulfilling life that's more true to your authentic self. So this is what I do. I'm very, very passionate on bringing you stories on a weekly basis, which I call the good news. And for me, the good news is that, yes, we all go through pain and we all go through traumas. And, statistics show that 30% of the 70% of the people report that they have experienced at least one childhood adverse experience in their life. But I really think it's more than that. And I think sometimes people underreport because either A, they're not aware that they've experienced trauma, or B, they're in denial and they don't want to admit it. I think it's closer to like 85 to 90% of the population has experienced at least one adverse childhood experience. I really think it's much more. So I really bring these stories to you, number one, to raise awareness on how prevalent trauma is in our lives, and to raise to lift the stigma related to that. And I also bring it to you just so to provide you with some hope, because in every story that we hear, there is the gift of hope wrapped in it. So trauma is what wraps the gift of hope, and the hope is in stories such as my story, such as Derek's story, that even though we've experienced trauma, if you find a way to repurpose that, and if you find a way to give it empowering meaning, you actually have the power to change the world one person at a time. And that's what we're here to do. And if last night I screamed a lot in my live because I get very passionate and excited, so I'm trying not to do that today. But I get really, this is something that it's a really, I get really, really passionate about, because I really feel that we all have a choice to make in life, and that choice is, how do we want to view things, and what meaning do we want to give to things? And whatever meaning we give to things and what we speak gives life to things. And we want to speak life into ourselves and into our dreams. And we want to give empowering meaning to the things that we go through. And I just really want everyone out there to know that you're not alone, and we've all experienced something serious in our lives, and the majority of us have. And most of the time, people have experienced 2, 3, and 4 things, even more, because I don't even want to say what my ACE score is, and I'm sure you know what the ACE score is. I don't
Oh,
know.
I'm gonna tell you what mine is. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what
I
mine
think mine is 9.5. I
is.
always say half because there's one of them that I'm like, I'm not sure if
Yeah,
I think mine is that, and if 9.5 really does not, it's really bad. 9.5 means my life already got
yeah, it's
shortened.
not a good thing.
No,
Yeah,
it's not a good
I
thing.
was an 8. I was an 8.
You're
So
an 8. Yeah,
yeah,
so you see, and we're standing. The fact that we're still
absolutely.
standing, and I'll teach more about like what the ACE is in my upcoming training on childhood trauma and its impact. And
Mm,
let me tell you, once you learn that, because when I learned that, it was like poof, like
mm.
the emoji where the head goes poof.
Yeah, you start
Oh,
understanding like, oh, this
yeah,
is yeah, yeah.
it is so when you learn that. So I'm really excited about that class. But anyway, I'm gonna give you a chance right now to talk a little bit more about like what it is that you do. But you are an emotionally responsive coach right now. Derek works with men and on helping them. Well, I'll let you talk. You're gonna do it much better than I will.
Thank you, Sarai. Hey, Circle of Champions, I'm so excited to be here right now. I met this wonderful young lady by chance, by happenstance. We was in another group and I seen her doing great things. She seen some of the things that I was doing. We was able to connect on a common ground, on a common bond of being trauma informed, or as I like to say, trauma responsive. My name is DBM Powers from DBM Powers Coaching, and let me tell you a bit about my purpose. My purpose is using my passion and my responsiveness to motivate and empower others to steadily adapt, recover, and grow from overwhelming life experiences so they feel safe, connected, and in control. I say overwhelming life experiences in the place of trauma because a lot of times people do not identify with trauma. People do not understand
Right.
what trauma actually is. People don't, they look at like, oh, that's just something that I'm going through. And for a long time, I was the same way. I didn't understand. I
Yeah.
wasn't always this person I am today, sitting here in front of you. I wasn't always owning my own business. I wasn't always helping men to overcome. But as of right now, I'm an emotional responsive coach. All right. I help men to manage their emotions so their emotions don't manage them. I help men to be able to identify and use their emotions to inform their thoughts so they can make the choices and decisions to get the things they want in life instead of allowing their emotions to dictate their behavior and have them acting out or have them doing things that they don't need to do in life. The thing about emotions, man, emotions are what drive us. And if we don't learn how to manage them, we will become a slave to our feelings and the people that put us in it. But like I was saying, I wasn't always this person I am today. Listen, I come from a single parent household. I am a product of a drug addicted, very abusive father. My mother did her best. I watched my mother being beaten like she was a man on countless occasions. I watched my dad as I tried to intervene and help my mother. He beat me. Listen, I have been homeless. I had to sleep in cars. There was times I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. Listen, I have been physically, emotionally, and sexually abused. Yes, I said it. I have been sexually abused. And for a long time, that's something that I held on to. That's something that I kept a secret. And the thing about it is that pain was driving me around. That shame, that guilt, that hurt was driving me around through the most of my life. I couldn't understand for the life of me, sorry, why I struggled the way I did. I couldn't understand for the life of me why I couldn't always do the things that I know I wanted to do, but I wasn't able to do them. Not that I'm blaming the things that happened to me, but I am looking at my choices that I make in response to the things that happened to me. I always didn't make good choices based on my responses to my trauma or the unresolved trauma in my life. See, it took me a long time to understand that one, I'm not what happened to me, and two, what happened to me wasn't my fault. See, I struggled all through my younger years. I was very aggressive. I was very emotional. I was very reactive. See, to understand is that I had an issue with a lot of people, but the issue wasn't with the people. The issue was with myself because I was carrying around so much shame, carrying around so much guilt. See, whenever I was confronted, whenever something happened to me that I didn't like, whenever I felt someone challenge me, they really wasn't challenging me. They was challenging that 8-year-old boy inside of me. And then no one really understood that me and that 8-year-old boy made an agreement a long time ago that when I get big enough, that when I get old enough, when I get strong enough, I would never let anybody disrespect me, talk to me crazy, make me feel insignificant, make me feel shameful or bad about anything. So that's why I always acted out in violence whenever I felt threatened. And you know how it is when you walk around in survival mode, sorry. When you walk around in survival mode, you don't see nothing else. Nothing else really matters. All you're trying to do is protect yourself, and you're hyper vigilant. You're worrying about, is this person out to get you, or are they talking about me, or what are they saying about me? And you're always trying to defend yourself. But really what you're trying to defend is your bruised ego. You're trying to defend that shame that you're carrying, that guilt that you're carrying. It took me a long time to realize that I had to, first of all, acknowledge the things that I've been through. Acknowledge that, yes, I went through some tough things. Then I had to accept that what I've been through, I cannot change. I cannot go back and undo it. It happened. But I also had to accept that there's things that I can change. The way I respond to the things that happen to me, the way I deal with the things that happen to me. Then I had to work on expressing it, expressing my thoughts and my feelings, expressing and working through it and communicating, using my words. Being able to identify my feelings, being able to identify what's really going on with me so that I can better express and use these emotions to help instead of hurt me. And then last, I had to take action. And that's what got me to the point I'm at right now. I had to take action to deal with the things that happened in my life. By me taking action, by me stepping up and saying, you know what? I don't like how I'm doing things. I do not like the choices that I'm making, because I'm not making choices based off my present or my future. I'm making choices based off my past and the things that happened to me. So I had to take massive action. And the way that looked for me was I had to go to therapy. I had to seek professional help. Then I had to, once I got through that part and I was able to identify and understand why or what causes me to make the choices that I make, what causes me to do the things that I do, I was able to start making better choices. I was able to build, I'll call it a safety plan, or I was able to build my tool belt, my skill set to be able to manage myself when I'm emotional and manage myself when I'm upset or when somebody comes at me in a way that I don't like. Then in the process of doing that, after I was able to start working on my trauma, I was able to build my business. I went and got another professional, another coach to help me put things in line to build my business and get me to the point that I'm at right now, to get me to the point where my future is based off my future, not my past. Meaning things I'm doing in life right now are not based off the things that happen to me, but it's based off the things that I want to happen to me.
Right.
And for me.
You said so much. I was writing and writing and writing.
I know I get to rolling now.
But look, you said so many super important things. I'm gonna go down the list.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Yes, ma'am.
one of the last things that you said, well, let's not go to the last thing. You said there's 3 steps that you do. There are 3 steps that you did. One, if I have this right, you said number 1 is that you face it, right?
Yeah,
that you get awareness.
Yeah, I acknowledged. What was going on.
So you acknowledge what was going on. And I want everyone out there to know that it isn't until you acknowledging is just step 1 for real. It's step 1. Mm-hmm. So, and it's so sad when people some people go a lifetime never acknowledging that yes. ever happened.
Yes.
And it is because of the shame. And if you're watching out there, I do this show because I also want to break curses. And if you're out there watching this, and you happen to bump into this story and you're someone who still hasn't acknowledged something that happened to you, then this is the perfect moment. This is a message for you. This is a perfect moment to shift you and to shake you to where you need to acknowledge it. Because I mentioned this before, one of the saddest things that I saw here at my agency is when a 70-something-year-old woman came in, and at that point is when she finally acknowledged and let out that her father has sexually abused her for I don't know how many years as a child. And she carried that for all those years.
My goodness.
That's like, and she almost said it like a secret. She was like, you know what? She was still being secret like that in the room talking about it. And I'm proud of her that she did say it. But the fact that it took 70 years to feel safe enough to say it or to even give herself permission, that's the load of shame that we carry when we have these deep, dark secrets. So acknowledging was number 1. Number 2, you said was what?
Accepting.
Oh, okay. I got something else. I got the way you respond is the way.
Accepting is so. One, it's really the 4 T's. So it was acknowledging, accepting, expressing, and then taking massive action. So we acknowledged what was going on with us, what happened to us, what didn't happen to us. then we accept. And a lot of times people get caught up with that accepting, not accepting, it's accepting. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's ACCEPTING, accept. To accept does not mean you're being passive. It does not mean that you're okay with what happened to you.
Right.
But when you accept what happened to you, you accept, or when you accept what didn't happen to you, you are able to free yourself and understand that, okay, I can't go back and change that. Now, the flip side of that is there are things you can change. And that is what you picked up on, is how I respond to what happened to me. So I had to accept the things that happened and did not happen, but also accept that I cannot change it. But there's things that I can change, like my response.
Right, right. And the E stands for what?
Express.
Express. Okay, so one thing I wanted to say about that is that when you were speaking, was really stood out for me, is when you accepting things really means that you're facing yourself.
Yes.
And you know what happens when as a child, when you experience any form of trauma, but especially the types of trauma that have to do with abuse, whether it's emotional, physical, or sexual, but when it has to do with abuse, the worst thing that happens isn't even that experience of being sexually abused or even the multiple experiences. The worst thing that happens is that you get ripped apart and you get pulled away from your true self, because you start identifying as either dirty, broken, used, whatever word it is that you attach to it. So you start identifying as that, so then you get ripped away from who you truly are. And that's part of my message as far as like Circle of Champions and everything I do, is that I try to bring you back. So my message is, let's go back to greatness. Let's go back to you being the real you. Let's go back to your authentic you. And the reason for that is because once you do the accepting and you start turning back towards yourself, then you start remembering who you were and who you were created to be. And so that's a big thing that I do. That's a big thing. I think acceptance has a lot to do with that. And like you were saying, Derek, acceptance doesn't mean that what happened to you was okay.
Right.
What it does mean is that exactly what the other thing you said, which is you're accepting that someone outside of you did something to you that was not deserving of you, you were not deserving of. I'm sorry. And at the same time, by doing that, you're placing the responsibility on, you're passing the ball back to them.
Thank you.
You don't have to carry that ball the rest of your life. That's what we're trying to say.
You know, two of the most important things on my path of recovery was these two things right here. I was told that I'm not what happened to me, and what happened to me wasn't my fault.
And it's never your fault. It's never your fault. And, I don't even know how many, you have no idea how many times I've heard moms tell their daughters, it was your fault because you were wearing those shorts.
Yes.
But, and that's that makes me sick to my stomach to hear that. Or it was your fault it's never your fault. An adult decision you're not responsible for other people's decision. That's it. That's all you need to know. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a short, a bikini. It doesn't matter. That doesn't give anyone the right to violate you.
Thank you. And that's important. And when you accept that you were not what happened to you and it wasn't your fault, that's free. And you have to allow yourself to be free. You have to let yourself off the hook. That's what's important. Allow yourself to be free from that baggage. You don't have to carry that around. Accept that, yes, some things happened to you that were outside of your control, but you are not what happened to you. And what happened to you wasn't your fault.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you want to get into this part, but there are a lot of ways that shame comes with the territory, but then shame is expanded when adults that are supposed to protect you don't protect you. And there are many circumstances where adults make it worse. I've seen it happen 1,000 times, where the child tells the parent or the mom or whatever it is, and it's so overwhelming for the parent that the parent then pushes it away or says it didn't happen, slaps the person, don't ever say that again, or there's so many ways where the adults involved, or a teacher doesn't do what they're supposed to do.
And that's where that trauma informed comes in. That you're absolutely right. And I do want to speak on this because this is very prevalent, especially in the Black community. We're
Right.
taught we do not air our dirty laundry in the street. And I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
speak a little bit about my experience. When it happened, it was a family meeting with the elders, and then that was that.
Right.
That was that. It was addressed
It was handled in-house.
in house. There was no counseling behind it. All that was left with was awkward family get-togethers. Because
Right.
now in my mind, I'm looking out. Do people think I'm homosexual?
Right.
People think I wanted this?
Right.
Do people think I'm gay? Because it happened inside my family. It was a male family member that did it, an older male family member. So when that happened, it left me with a lot of questions and a lot of doubt and a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. So that's why I was so aggressive. That's why I was always fighting, because once again, I'm trying to cover something. I'm carrying around that shame and that guilt. And for men, and this is why I focus on men, because I've been there. And for men, it's a lot different because we're supposed to be tough. Society says we're supposed to be, these alpha males, and we're supposed to not show emotions, and we're not supposed to express ourselves. We gotta man up, and we gotta be tough, and we gotta fight through this. And that's why a lot of men are dying because of that, because they're carrying that shame and that guilt, and they feel guilty because they're not supposed to ever feel vulnerable. Lord forbid you ever admit that you're sad, or that you're hurting, or that you're scared, or you're afraid. And I couldn't admit these things. I couldn't admit that I feel guilty about things that happened to me at 8, 9 years old. I couldn't admit that I am scared, that scared little boy is still inside of me. And I'm worrying about how I'm being perceived. I'm worrying about how you're looking at me, how you're talking about me. So as soon as if I felt that you looked at me funny, I'm addressing it. And if you say something out of character, we stepping outside and we're going to handle this.
Right.
So with men, it's challenging working with men because we're taught that we're not supposed to show vulnerability. We're not supposed to show that we are hurting, that we are upset, and we're in denial about the effects of the trauma that happened in our life. And really, men are, sorry, you know this. It doesn't go nowhere. Just because you don't want to acknowledge, accept, or express it doesn't mean it goes away. No, it comes out, and it comes out in different ways. You got men that are so numb that they play emotional dodgeball with their feelings, and they try to avoid every feeling they can, so they don't have to feel the things that happen to them. They don't have to feel the guilt, the pain, or the shame, and they're numb, and they're emotionally withdrawn and cut off to everyone around them. Then you also have men who act out due to their trauma, whether it's sexually acting out, whether it's through drugs and alcohol, whether it's through abusing another person. Hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to come out, regardless of how you try to suppress it and hide it and bury it down deep. The effects of the things that happen to you, the effects of your unresolved trauma or overwhelming life experience, always rise to the surface.
Another way that comes out, is when we're talking about unresolved trauma. That unresolved trauma in that child, well, that child grows up to become an adult carrying around what we call the invisible suitcase. And the invisible suitcase carries all your unresolved issues. It carries your issues, the ones that you resolve, but it carries also all your unresolved issues. And if you're someone who had that experience, such as the one that you're speaking of, and you didn't resolve it, you didn't face it, that's where generational trauma comes in. Because if you were sexually abused, or if you've been abused in any way, the likelihood that your children will have the same experience is increased by, I forgot what the statistic is.
Absolutely.
But on top of that, if you didn't resolve it, which I've seen this happen many times, that then you go to your mom or your dad or whatever and say, this happened to me, but you didn't resolve yours, then you'll say, you know what, the same thing happened to me, you'll get over it. It's all right. Don't even talk about it. And then you start teaching you have to push it down, and it didn't really happen. And then you invalidate what your child's experience is. And then that's the loop of generational trauma that happens because no one stopped and resolved it. So I'm not really sure if that's an experience in your family, but it's common. And I just want to put it out there to everyone out there, because I don't know who's listening, and I don't know who has experienced this. And I know many times it happens where there's so much shame for the parent because the parent went through it too, and they didn't get it resolved. because their mother or father didn't resolve it, so they're just handling it the way that it was always handled. Like, let's not talk about it. Like, black communities are Hispanic communities are a lot like black communities, and it is also handled in house, or
Yeah,
I'm going to handle it myself, and I'm going to go to. I'll do something to the person. No, the
yeah,
police don't
right,
need to be involved. You know what I mean? So
right.
it's the same. It's the same type of thing. But what happens is when that happens too, the adults resolve it, but they forget the child. No one went back to the kid.
No one, yes.
No one goes back to the kid and says anything. And then, if right now you had an accident equivalent to the amount of emotional pain that you have when an experience like that happens, but if it was if you had an accident where you physically got injured the same way that you emotionally got injured, you wouldn't be expected to go to school the next day. You wouldn't be expected.
That's a very good point you brought up. And you know what? And I know Besser Vanderkolk, really big on
Yeah,
trauma and everything like that. He talks about that. And what you're talking about right now is public and private traumas. And
right.
public traumatic experiences are like natural disasters, this COVID-19 pandemic, a car accident, a school shooting. And think about that. What happens during a pandemic? What happens during a national disaster? What happens on a school shooting? What happens on a car wreck? People are surrounding you. They're there for you. They've
Hmm.
seen you physically been, you know,
They're acknowledging, they're validating, they're
yeah.
supporting you.
Now look at private traumas.
Right.
The things that go on inside the home that you don't talk about and no one knows about. You're not able to get that support and that connection to help you through that. And that's what's hurting because we want to keep it because we're embarrassed or we want to keep it down inside. One of the true ways of healing is through connection. Those experiences have to be validated.
Yeah.
Those experiences have to be talked about. You have to be surrounded by love and uplifted, and it requires a safe place. It requires to do that. But a lot of times, if you look at public trauma, look at 9/11. Look at the outcry of support for victims of 9/11. Look at the outcry of support for victims of school shootings. You understand when a public traumas happen, you got school counselors there the next day. I used to coach football down in Southern Maryland, and we had a horrific accident where we lost. It was 5 kids in the car, and we lost 4 of the 5 kids.
Wow.
School was shut down for a couple of days. There was school psychologists, all through the school. Like it was a big thing, but the support was there. When you have these private traumas, when you're battling with these things internally, and you're scared to talk about it, shut it out, you're creating more havoc on yourself, and you may possibly pass it down to your children, and they're going to pass it on. This trauma, these unresolved issues need to be dealt with. You need to unpack that invisible suitcase and start talking with these things.
And it also speaks to the difference between the way our society looks at mental health and physical health, because and even though a lot of the traumas that we're speaking of have a physical impact, and it has a physical loss and physical injury too. So you have those things in a physical way, but then it's not really looked at as the way it is, like if you break an arm or you break a leg, or
Absolutely.
And that if you had an accident and you went through the windshield, let's say, and you had like some serious physical injury, that will be you would get over that quicker mentally,
Then you would,
than you would everything else, and you would have more support for that than if you were sexually abused and taken to the hospital. Because then also a lot of kids that get sexually abused, and let's say there is a response, and you report it, there's a response, you go to the hospital, then you have to go through the rape kit and all that. That's also traumatic. That's more trauma added.
It is. Thank you. You got to put the smock on. You can't do this. You can't do that. And all these invasive testing and these invasive questions and
right, exactly. So that was all like really, really great stuff that you talked about there. And you said, I want, if anyone could type out there, I am not what happened to me, and it wasn't my fault. Those are the 2 statements that you're saying were super empowering for you.
Yes. I am not what happened to me, and what happened to me wasn't my fault. Yeah, you got to claim it. You have to own that. What Sarai is talking about, recovering, getting back to what you're supposed to be before the disruption, before the disturbance, before the things try to come and break you. You have to claim and own that to recover and move forward. And that starts by identifying and acknowledging and accepting, I am not what happened to me. And what happened to me wasn't my fought.
Yeah, awesome. Um, Elkie saying facts, truth, very true. Sam is saying real life stories touches us all. So sad. Let go, let God. If you
Absolutely.
guys have any questions out there, or any, yeah, I would say only questions because I'm seeing all the comments. But if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them. Is there anything else you want to touch on as far as like what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think, we talked about the expressing. That's very important about being to talk and let it out, unpack the things that's going on with you. But to do that, and as you know, it has to be in a safe place, it has to be in a safe environment. It has to be with someone you trust. So you don't, and like I know SARAI or her circle of champions and all the great people that are in there, that it's a safe environment to unpack and unload without judgment. My
Mm-hmm.
Facebook group, it's a safe environment, Victory Village. That's what we're built upon. For you to be seen, for you to be heard, for you to be validated. It's a safe environment. When you're unpacking and unloading these things, it has to be in a safe environment with people that are understanding and responsive. And I was fortunate enough to be able to find these things later on in my life. And that's important. And then the next thing, and I think this is the most critical thing for me, sorry, is you have to take massive action. And you and I spoke about this before about setting the intention. You heard about you saw my one rant when I went off on my Facebook Live on a Tell the Truth Tuesday, and I was cussing up the storm because I was so. Don't get me wrong, it was controlled aggression. Like I knew it was for a point, it was for a purpose. The thing that trips me out, and the thing that I don't ever understand, and I might not be responsive enough to, is when people know what they know. They know that they don't like the way things are going. They know that they're having a hard time. They know they're not making good choices. They know that things happen to them in their life, and they identify these things. They acknowledge these things, but they don't want to do nothing about these things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard for me. I struggle with that. That is frustrating for people to sit there and say, I know this, and they can break down all the terminology, all the lingo about what trauma does to you. They can quote Dr. Bessel van der Kolk off his book and what trauma does to you, this, and with your attachment theory, and they can quote all these technical terms. But in my business and what I do, what you know and what you do with what you know is two totally different things.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you know something if you ain't doing it, because then that means you really don't know it then.
Exactly.
And that's something I struggle with. I'm very direct. I am very to the point. When it comes to this trauma, we can't tiptoe around it.
Exactly.
We can't, and it's not about trying to make you feel bad. Like I said, we're responsive and understanding to what goes on, but you can't tiptoe through this when it comes to your recovery. Yeah,
anybody out there that if you have someone you love that is dealing with any kind of trauma, not just isolated to sexual abuse, it could be any kind of trauma. The reason why you don't tiptoe around it is because when you tiptoe around something, you're actually saying that's shameful and I don't even want to talk about it because I feel icky. And so you're contributing to the shame and to the guilt by doing that. That's something I teach our therapists because, as a brand new therapist, feel uncomfortable talking about things because you're really not even trained on that. Like it's just starting to happen now. But the more a client or your friend or your family member is going to pick up on your response and your feeling of like not knowing what to do, and then they're going to shut down because they're trying to protect you. They're not going to want to make you feel uncomfortable, so they're not going to really open up to you. And what's really important in all of this, what's really important in any form of trauma, is allowing the person to vent and tell their story without trying to correct them. You don't need to correct them. You just need to let them just tell their story, because once you tell your story, it no longer resides inside of you.
Thank you. That is.
You're so funny. You're like, shh.
No, like for real, because that is key, man. And like,
yes, it is.
It's so important, man. And I get a lot of times that we're not saying that we can't make space and you can't feel how you feeling. And because let me tell you something, this recovery journey, and one of the reasons why many people choose to stay stuck. And listen to me, I said it. Yes, I said it. Choose to stay stuck. I don't mean children who've been abused. I'm talking about as adults who know that things aren't going right in their life, who know that they have some messed up things that happened to them, and they're making some bad choices based upon the things that happened to them. What I'm saying is, yes, people choose to stay stuck in their mess because it's convenient, it's familiar, and it's an uncomfortable, comfortable hell. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh,
It's
for
an
sure.
uncomfortable, comfortable hell, or it's dysfunctional function. You
And you know
understand?
what? You know what's code? You know, a code word for choosing to stay stuck is I'm confused.
Yeah, yes,
When you say you're confused,
yes.
that's just a great justification for not moving.
How
You
so?
know,
How are you? How so? How are you? Like I hit how
yes,
so? I just want the how so
yeah,
about you confused about. And listen, I'm not judging because
yeah,
this
yeah.
recovery is hard.
It's
So
hard.
when I was going through my moments, when I was going through my steps in the early stages of my recovery, I used to sit at my desk crying because it was hard. I wanted to revert back to these old behaviors that did not serve me because I was very uncomfortable. I was very uncomfortable during the beginning stages of my process because one, I didn't see myself as the way I was trying to get to. I still see myself as that disturbed, disrupted, and broken young boy.
Yeah.
So now when you start looking outside yourself and you start trying to envision things that you don't actually believe or see internally, that creates those feelings of discomfort. It actually sends signals to your mind and to your body to make you feel uncomfortable so you shrink back into your comfort zone. That's why a lot of lottery winners, I think it's like 8 out of 10 lottery or 9 out of 10 lottery winners go broke and within 5 years because of they're not comfortable with the money. They don't see themselves as being rich. So therefore they revert back to overhead because they're more comfortable being broke. They don't know how to manage the things that go along with them. So for me, in the early stages of my recovery, I had to fight against myself every day not to revert back to my old behaviors, not to revert back to the things that made me comfortable to deal with my dysfunction. I was comfortably dysfunctional.
Hmm. Yeah.
Now,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was comfortably dysfunctional, and that's why a lot of people stay stuck. But this recovery process, oh, it's so hard. It's ugly. It's downright painful at times. But let me tell you something. It's worth it. It is so worth it because whoever's listening to this, whoever's dealing with something, whoever's going with something, it's worth it because you're worth it. To get free of that emotional and mental bondage and get to that heaven that you want, that freedom that you want, it's worth going through the tough work. It's worth going through the hard times. It's worth going through the days that you're crying, whatever. And during those times, it's important to make space for what you're feeling. And it's okay. It's going to be tough.
You just made me think about something. So let me see. So something. Let me see if I could how well I could explain this. So what happens is that as children, when we go through certain types of traumas, there's different types of traumas that, and also I'm going to teach this in the class. But there's something called complex trauma, and complex trauma is
Absolutely.
when you go through long-term trauma, and it's many different types of traumas. So you go through multiple traumas, and it lasts long-term. When that happens to us as children, we develop ways of coping. And why do we develop ways of coping? Because if we didn't have these coping mechanisms, we might have killed ourselves. We
Yeah.
might have something might have happened. So some coping mechanisms could be rage, um, anger, avoidance. It could be like drinking. Yeah, it could be alcohol. It could be all these different things. So
Sex.
right, sex.
Promiscuity. Yes.
Think of your own. For me in particular, I'll be honest. My coping mechanism for just about everything is avoidance and getting busy and that sort of thing. So I do a lot of avoidance. But what I want to bring up here is that it's okay that we had those coping mechanisms because they helped us survive. So at some point, those coping mechanisms were our friend. But what we need to recognize is that right now as adults, most of us are safe. Most of us have created a safe our home. We created our money. We've created safety for ourselves, and we need to understand. And I want you guys to write this for yourself or write it up there. And I want you to understand and say this to yourself: what once protected me is now my enemy. So that coping mechanism that you had at one point was your friend, and it
Mm.
protected you, and it probably protected you from death. But what once protected you is now your enemy. So that rage is now your enemy. That avoidance is now your enemy. The sexual promiscuity is now your enemy. What other things? There's so many ways
So
that we.
to,
What else?
to touch on that right there, you said something very powerful. So I'm gonna unpack another level of transparency. My coping mechanism was sex, and for me, what you're talking about with that statement, say that statement again about what served.
I what once protected me is now my enemy.
So
Type
what I
type
had,
it up, guys. Put it in the comments. What once protected me is now my enemy. You say
sex
that to
protected
yourself.
me. I didn't revert to drugs. I didn't revert to alcohol. It was women. It was sex. It wasn't about the woman. It was about the feeling that I got, that experience that I got. And I was hypersexual at a young age due to the things that I've seen, due to the things that I've been through. And for me, that was my coping mechanism. Whenever I felt bad, whenever I felt down, whenever I didn't feel loved, whenever I felt, unappreciated, whenever it was always reverted back to sex. So
Could
with
I
me,
could I stop you for 1 second? Because
yeah,
what you're saying is also so powerful. Because I want every most if you're in the Hispanic community, and I'm going to say the Black community too, because down here in Miami, that's where mostly Black and Hispanic. But down here, we don't allow our boys that have been sexually abused to even complain, because it's like, man, you got lucky. It's
yeah,
like a whole other view
yeah,
on things.
yeah,
But that's if it's a woman on a man. But what you said earlier was that for you had a feeling of like, man, are people going to think I'm homosexual? So
yes,
doing what you're saying, like the sexuality so early, because you were sexualized so early, and with women is like an overcompensation to prove I
absolutely.
am a man. I am a man. Let me show you what kind of a man I am.
Yeah, yeah, and for me to get past that, I actually had to write a letter to sex. I had to
Oh,
have a
okay.
breakup letter. I wrote because I had to change how I viewed sex.
That's so powerful too.
Yeah, I had to. Yeah, I had a breakup letter with sex because I had to shape my whole view, my whole. And to be honest with you, sorry, when you're talking about losing behaviors you don't serve, I was scared. I did not want to lose my relationship with sex
Right.
because it served me so long and it made
Of
me feel so
course.
good. So I had to change my whole outlook on what sex meant. And I was blessed with a wonderful woman who didn't feed my addiction when it came to sex. And I had to truly work through these things. And it was hard at times. It was difficult. And I wanted to revert back to old behaviors. But I was able to shift that perspective and develop new and better coping skills that move me towards the things that I want in life and not the things that happen to me in life.
Right. Yes. Yes. That's so powerful. And I'm gonna take it to another level too. So when you say, if I say what once protected me is what once protected me is no, I have it written down because I said this to someone earlier. So I'm trying to remember. So what once protected me is now my enemy.
Mm.
What do you do with your enemy? You know what you do with your enemy? You go to war with your enemy. And
Whew.
when you go to war with your enemy, what is war? Let's think about what is war. War is long term. War is a bunch of little battles, one that end up you winning the war.
Is it nice? Is it sweet? Is it comfortable? No, no.
Right, exactly. It's
Right.
none of those things. It will be difficult. It will be painful. You might lose some battles. And those battles could be like, maybe one day you're doing good and then another day you slipped up, and maybe you did something, maybe you did go have sex when you had said no, so you slipped up one day and you lost that battle. But you know what you do? No one goes to war and loses a battle and says, "You know what? That's it. I give up," and you come back.
Back, yes, you
Yeah,
can't
you don't
back.
do yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. What do you do? What do you do when you lose a battle? What do you do when you lose a battle?
Me, while I struggled with it initially, um, I would stop. I would stop where I was and I was sitting in it for a
Okay.
week, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I would binge on sexual behavior, sexual activity, till I felt disgusted. Then I'm like, I can't do it. I'm ready to start again. So as I began to progress and to come up with different coping skills, if I did have a slip early on, I didn't judge myself. I understood and I made space. Okay, I slipped up. I gotta get back up and keep moving forward. I
Exactly.
gotta keep going. And that was what changed. I didn't sit in it. I kept moving. I lost that battle today. I journaled about it. I
Yeah.
acknowledged, I accepted, and I expressed it, and I took action to move forward tomorrow.
Exactly. So if remember, this is about winning the war. It's not about winning the battles. You're gonna win. You want to win the battles, but once in a while, if you don't win a battle, that's that you. It's not even about being okay. It's about being compassionate with yourself, and it's about saying, you know what, I'm going to dust myself off. I'm going to rest. If you have to rest, I'm going to eat, I'm going to shower, and tomorrow will be a new day, and then you start again. But what you just said, you do not give up. You just never give up.
No growth is going to come in your comfort zone. You're going to have to feel uncomfortable. You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Exactly. Exactly. I hope you guys are enjoying this talk. This talk could touch many many lives. If you have anyone in your mind that you think needs to hear this, maybe they're going through their own battle or their own thing, go ahead and tag them so that they could hear this, because this is a very powerful story. And to have Derek come here and be fully transparent, I mean, that's really a gift that you're giving to others. There's a gift in our stories, and you don't know who could be listening to this,
Mhm.
that you could save someone's life and not even know that you saved their life by hearing this. And
Absolutely.
that's why we do what we do. That's why we're here. That's why we're talking and telling stories, because I imagine at one point this was incredibly uncomfortable, like, to say, to be so transparent is very very difficult. It's very very difficult to do that.
Yeah, it was. It was to say, to admit that I had an issue with sex, to admit that, I struggle with, with my relationship with sex. It was difficult to admit at first. I don't want to be looking like a weirdo or like a freak, or, saying, or something, what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, so, I had to accept, where I'm at, and realize that, okay, this is what's going on, but this is not who I am.
exactly.
And it's no longer going, I'm not going to allow it to control my life any longer. I have a choice to make. And at the end
Hmm.
of the day, we all have choices. We are the total sum of our choices. That's all it comes down to.
And also, like, the important thing about us talking is to normalize.
Yes.
I want to, I don't want to make trauma okay, but I do want to normalize your experience with trauma. Trauma is so common. Way, even I'm gonna, I wrote that in my what I wrote the other day, which is, I've been a therapist for 20 years. I have my own little invisible suitcase that's not little, it's very big and heavy. I
Hmm.
also have my suitcase. So even with all of that, even with being a therapist, even with working with foster kids and everything, it really wasn't until the last 5 years that I really became trauma informed. And it made the it made the biggest difference to understand that, it happens to the majority, because people who experience trauma feel like you're like in a tube, and you're like, it's only me, and you're like an alien. You feel like an alien, and it hasn't happened to anyone. It's just me. Let me keep it quiet because people are going to think I'm weird, or all these thoughts that kids have, and then you grow up into an adult thinking the same thing. But I really want everyone out there to know that trauma is incredibly common. And if right now I asked every single person here watching to let me know, have you been through at least one trauma in your childhood, I guarantee everyone's going to say yes. Just about everyone's going to say, if I said put a
Absolutely.
one, if you've been through a childhood trauma in your life, just one childhood trauma, put a one. And childhood trauma is any form of abuse: sexual, physical, emotional, being neglected,
So I got the.
homelessness.
Sorry, I can read them right here.
Okay, go ahead, read them.
So for the ACE study, before the ages of 18, have you ever had reoccurring or severe emotional abuse? Have you ever had reoccurring and severe physical abuse? Have you ever had sex? Have you ever had sexual abuse? Have you ever had no emotional neglect or physical neglect? That's the first five. All right. So once again, reoccurring and severe emotional abuse, reoccurring and severe physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, and physical neglect. So the second set of five, growing up in a household with. Have you ever grown up in a household with both biological parents not being present? Your mother being treated violently? Have you grown up in a household with an alcoholic or drug user? Have you grown up in a household with anybody who has been mentally ill, chronically depressed, or a family member attempting suicide? And last, have you grown up in a household with a family member who has been in prison?
So those are the 10 A score. Those are the 10 things. If you said yes, how many ones or how many yeses do you have? And you could even look this up. You could look up what that means for you. So depending on how many aces you have, that has a direct impact on your life expectancy. It has a direct impact on your what is it, the statistics as far as your are you capable of committing suicide, what it
Health.
there's a bunch of health issues,
Yes.
a lot of health issues related to your lungs. Your heart and lungs are severely affected
Obesity.
when you experience severe trauma, and depending on how many ACEs you have determines, even if you have a healthy lifestyle. So it's not even about, well, you know what, of course that's going to happen, because the more trauma you have, the more likely it is that you're going to have a lifestyle that's not going to be healthy. But the research shows that it's not even about your lifestyle. It's simply about the impact that all this trauma had on your immune system, and it has on your developing brain, your developing body. And remember, people don't really know this, that when you're growing up, when you're a child, it's not just your body growing, it's your immune system too. So trauma affects your immune system, so that when, as you get older, your immune system doesn't function as well as it would if you didn't experience those traumas. A lot of kids have asthma, a lot of, and there's so many things, but all of that is directly related to your traumas and how many traumas you experience, and how long you experienced it. It's very different to have one thing happen to you than to have multiple things happen to you during a long period of time. So there's kids that are raised in a violent home where they're getting abused in one way or another, then they go outside and there's violence in the community, and then they go to school and they got beat up. And and then on top of that, their mother, father died, or this is what complex trauma is, when multiple things happen to you. And it's called traumatic stress. Then your brain is constantly reacting to the traumatic stress, and it affects your immune system. And that's why there's a direct correlation between the number of traumas you have and how it affects your long-term health and your long-term life. What is it called? Your life expectancy.
Yeah.
So that's and I don't want to give only the bad news, because the good news is that there's also evidence showing that as you develop new skills and as you have new experiences, and Van, the person you were talking about a little, I'm so bad with names, Bezel.
Yeah.
So his research shows also that if you do meditation, if you do martial arts is a big one. Martial arts and meditation has a way of healing your body, and it has a way of healing your immune system. And the other thing that is important to know is that you might heal your heart. So for example, Derek, your heart is probably healed as much as possible. Like, I feel like my heart is healed too. So we could heal our heart, but our body's the last to find out. So our body is still in reaction mode, and our brain is still in reaction mode. So till this day, if I'm in the kitchen, let's say, and my children, like one of my kids, which my boys love to do this, they like to moonwalk up to me to where I don't even feel them, and they tap me. I just turn around and it's dangerous. Like, they're gonna get punched. So, you know what I mean? Like, so our body is the last to find out that we're healed. But you could start healing your body. You could start healing your nervous system and your immune system by doing meditation, by doing martial arts. Those are the type of things that have shown, research shows that it does help to correct some of these things. Which is very empowering and really important to know. And there's a lot of research on changing, how you could change your brain and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
very important. But you said about there's all kind of data out here, but I want them to know the most two important things in front of them is you and I. We are people who've been through. Your ACE score was 9.5. My ACE score was 8, and we're living testimonies right now. The power of adapting, recovering, and growing. The power of owning your story, not letting your story own you. The power of taking massive action to be able to move forward from the things that you've been through, and that's critical. And you see it, like it's not about the things that happen to you; it's about how we handle the things that happen to us.
exactly, exactly. Thank you. And we're gonna be closing out soon, but so I also want everyone to know that I said this last night, and I'll say it again. Some this isn't what you experience, but many people experience the traumas that are related to our parents. And something I want everyone to understand is, um, it didn't start with them. They are a continuation of their parents' story, and their parents are a continuation of their story. That's what generational trauma is. And trauma didn't start with us. We are a continuation of their story and going forward. And at some point, and in some generations, someone has to stop and chop it off. Someone has to stop the generational trauma with our children. So is that you? Are you going to stop it in your line? That's a choice that we all have to make. But I understand that it didn't start with us. We're just a continuation of a long line of story and generational trauma, whatever form of trauma. You know what I mean? So I
Absolutely.
hope that part makes sense. But we're ending now. I just want everyone to hold on. I want everyone um, to know where they could find you, how they could reach you if they want to reach you and talk to you. You work mostly with men,
Yeah.
so
do
that's
take
good
on
for
some,
everyone to know as well.
I do take on some female clients depending on the situation, but work mostly with men. You can find me at Derek Butler on Facebook or DBM Powers on Facebook. You can also go to my Facebook group, Victory Village. You can find me on LinkedIn at Derek Butler. You want to reach out to me also, my email is Derek Butler Empowers at gmail.com.
Awesome, and everyone should join his group if you want to. He posts so many. I mean, Derek is always posting such great, empowering things related to trauma. So, you could join his group as well. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was so awesome to have you and to have a talk that I rarely get to have with a lot of people. But I know that you have so much. You're so trauma informed. So and you also have your YouTube channel. You didn't mention that.
I haven't been on there, so I know we're supposed to start
Oh,
working. I haven't been on my YouTube channel in so long. I've been really focusing on getting this business off the ground and focusing on one social media platform.
I
So
know.
I will get going on YouTube again. I have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful song, promo song that the brother Shadow God Malak did for me.
Oh
And I
wow.
haven't put it out to the world yet because I'm going through my trademarking contract to get my terminology trademarked and that he put in the song for me because I don't want nobody to steal my stuff. But my brother put me down with a beautiful, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful promo song for what I do. So I'm probably gonna put it out to the world tomorrow because I can't keep this thing under wraps. And whatever's going to happen is going to happen. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. So anybody gonna be able to take my trauma and form motivational empowerment? That's me. I created that. So I'm gonna put my song out, but I will get back to my YouTube stuff. But like I said, DBM Powers on Facebook or Derek Butler on Facebook. Derek Butler on LinkedIn, and you can join Victory Village, the Facebook group. We have a wonderful community in there. Sorry, I thank you so much for this platform you created. I thank you so much for us meeting and connecting through Lisa Nichols, and I'm just so proud of everything you do, and I look forward to just doing more amazing things with you. I truly appreciate you, sis.
Thank you, and the feelings likewise. Thank you so much, and I'm so happy I met you too. It's awesome. I'm so happy we're all connected.
Yes,
Um, all right, good night, everyone. Have a blessed night, and we will see each other tomorrow.
all right, guys, take